The dawn sky above Tokyo glows blood red on April 7, 1945. Captain Masao Suenaga tightens his worn leather gloves inside the cramped cockpit of his Ki-84 Hayate, the most elite fighter in the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force. Stationed at Chofu Airfield, 20 miles west of the capital, he hears a familiar low rumble echoing across the horizon. Another formation of American B-29 superfortresses is closing in from the south. Yet something feels different this morning. Suenaga's radio crackles with disarrayed chatter from command. Unidentified fighters, silver in color, approaching from the southeast. The seasoned pilot narrows his eyes. Southeast? That cannot be correct. The nearest American fighter base lies more than 600 miles away on Saipan, far beyond the reach of any escort fighters he has ever faced. The 28-year-old squadron leader has flown combat sorties for 3 relentless years. He has battled P-38 Lightnings in the Philippines, engaged F-6F Hellcats in brutal carrier raids, and sparred with the deadly new F-4U Corsairs over Okinawa. But every one of those battles occurred near enemy strongholds or carrier groups. Here, over Japan's heartland, Japanese fighters have always dominated the skies. Suddenly, his crew chief, Sergeant Yamamoto, slams his fist against the cockpit frame. "Captain, emergency scramble. Unknown fighters closing in on Tokyo from the south." Suenaga's blood turns cold. From the south means from where exactly? His mind races. The Americans seized Iwo Jima just 5 weeks earlier, but that island still lies 650 miles distant. No fighter ever built can fly that far. It defies all logic. As his Nakajima Ha-45 engine roars awake, Suenaga spots a glimmer of silver on the horizon. Not the dark shapes of carrier aircraft, but something utterly foreign. Something he has never seen. "All pilots scramble now," roars the command in his headset. "Unknown fighters over central Tokyo." Thundering down the runway, Suenaga feels dread tighten in his gut. In all his years, he has never heard such fear in command's voice. As his Ki-84 claws into the sky, one chilling thought takes hold. How have American fighters reached the skies over Tokyo? What Captain Suenaga cannot yet grasp, what no Japanese pilot could possibly fathom in this moment, is that he stands on the edge of a transformation in aerial combat that will overturn everything he accepts about range, endurance, and the very limits of fighter aircraft design forever. The gleaming silver machines slicing through the morning sky toward Japan's heart do not simply herald a new aircraft, but the final blow to any hope of preserving Japanese air dominance over their own homeland. The era of the P-51 Mustang and its unprecedented long-distance missions is now dawning. To truly understand the shock racing through Captain Suenaga's mind, one must understand what Japanese aviators believed about fighter performance in April 1945. Every aircraft they'd ever faced obeyed identical physical laws. Extra range always demanded compromise. More fuel always meant less firepower. Long missions always ended with helpless fighters limping home on fumes. The Japanese Air Force had mastered this unavoidable equation themselves. Their renowned A6M0 achieved astonishing range only through extreme sacrifices, removing armor, self-sealing tanks, and pilot defenses. The result was a nimble aircraft capable of extraordinary distances, yet doomed instantly by even a single burst of American fire. Pilots nicknamed it the flying coffin once enemy guns appeared. American fighters had long pursued an opposite doctrine, heavily armed, robustly armored, but limited to short reach. The burly P-47 Thunderbolt boasted 8 .50 caliber machine guns and could absorb astonishing punishment, but struggled to reach beyond 300 miles in combat. The twin-engine P-38 Lightning offered greater reach, yet still required bases close to hostile targets. This strategic flaw had granted Japanese homeland defenders a critical edge. So long as American fighters lacked the reach to escort their bombers, Japanese veterans could focus solely on destroying defenseless B-29s. Every superfortress crew crossing Japan's shoreline understood they were alone. Lieutenant Akira Watanabe, launching from Haneda in his Ki-61 Hien, had built his doctrine around this very fact. The Americans always arrive fat and slow, he told his wingman days earlier. Their escorts turn back at the coast. That is when we strike. At 06:47 hours, climbing through 12,000 feet with 5 wingmen, Watanabe sees them first. Sleek, polished fighters diving toward the vast Nakajima plant at Musashino. But something is wrong with this sight. These are not bombers. They are single-engine fighters, moving with the fierce assurance of aircraft launched from home territory, confident and swift in their purpose. "Control, this is Lightning 3, Watanabe declares calmly into the radio using his assigned call sign. "I observe 15, 20 single-engine fighters attacking the Musashino plant. Type unidentifiable." The airwaves erupt with frantic reports. Japanese pilots across wider Tokyo confirming the same unthinkable sight. American fighters operating freely above the capital, launching precise assaults hundreds of miles from any known base of operation. Captain Tomiro Ogawa, veteran commander of the 103rd Sentai from Kosa Airfield, holds 25 confirmed victories. He has faced American pilots over the Philippines, contested Okinawa, and defended home skies with unwavering resolve. Yet, as he draws within 1,000 yards of the enigmatic Silver Formation, a chilling realization forms. These aircraft are deadly in their elegance, streamlined with deliberate engineering. The wings evoke the British Spitfire's familiar shape, yet the nose stretches longer, sharper, more menacing. Most baffling, they carry large drop tanks beneath their wings, but maneuver as though fueled for the beginning of battle, not the desperate end. "Impossible," Ogawa mutters inside his oxygen mask. Those tanks should be dry by now. In truth, he is glimpsing the peak of American innovation, the union of North American's P-51 Mustang design with a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine tuned for extraordinary range. These bright machines have flown over 675 miles from Iwo Jima, battled over Tokyo's skies, and still retain fuel for the return journey. The Mustang's internal capacity of 184 gallons, combined with twin 108-gallon externals, and the Merlin V1650's unmatched efficiency, have birthed the unimaginable. A fighter boasting an 850-mile combat radius. Flight Sergeant Kenji Nakamura, diving his Ki-84 toward the invaders, feels his confidence disintegrate. If they can reach Tokyo, he thinks, no corner of Japan remains untouchable, no refuge exists. The Americans are not merely flying, they are hunting. Leading the charge, Major Robert W. Moore of the 15th Fighter Group's 45th Squadron spots Ogawa's Ki-84 rising toward the bomber stream and banks decisively to intercept. What follows is not the fuel-conserving defensive maneuver Japanese pilots expected from distant intruders. Instead, it is aggressive, assertive, predatory flying. Moore's P-51D, still carrying 200 gallons of fuel despite the 700-mile flight from Iwo Jima, plunges into a power dive that would be suicidal for any conventional long-range fighter. The Mustang's Packard-built Merlin V1657 engine delivers 1,695 horsepower in wartime emergency mode, hurling the sleek aircraft past 400 miles per hour as it descends in pursuit. Ogawa, realizing the unthinkable is unfolding, brakes sharply left and dives toward lower altitude. Behind him, Moore's Mustang closes the gap with ease, its substantial fuel reserves allowing reckless maneuvering that contradicts every Japanese assumption about long-range fighter behavior. In this moment, witnessing American fighters dominating the air over their own capital with hours of fuel to spare, Japanese aviators begin to accept a horrifying reality. The fundamentals of aerial warfare have changed, and they were never warned. The engagement begins at 06:58 hours above Musashino, and within seconds, Captain Masao Suinaga knows he is battling phantoms. Aircraft that should not even exist are executing maneuvers that defy logic, piloted by men who ought to be conserving every drop of fuel for a hopeless return flight. Instead, the P-51 Mustangs are hunting. Major Robert W. Moore's voice crackles through the radio to his wingman. "Blue flight, drop tanks now. We've got company." Suinaga watches in stunned disbelief as the American fighters jettison their external fuel tanks. not because they are exhausted, but because they are ready for battle with fuel remaining. "Impossible," Swinaga mutters into his oxygen mask. "Those tanks should have been empty 50 miles ago." Moore's aircraft banks hard and climbs towards Swinaga's Ki-84. The Japanese ace instinctively turns head-on to engage, a tactic long effective against fuel-depleted American pilots. But as the silver Mustang bears down, Swinaga sees something that chills him. The enemy is flying as though he took off from a nearby airfield. The two fighters converge at a combined speed exceeding 700 miles per hour. Swinaga opens fire first, his twin 12.7mm machine guns and dual 20mm cannons, unleashing a deadly stream toward the closing Mustang. Orange tracers cut through the air as Moore answers with a precise burst from his 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns, each spitting out 850 rounds a minute. In the final instant, both pilots break formation, Swinaga banking right, Moore banking left. Yet unlike every long-range fighter pilot trained to conserve precious fuel, Moore immediately reverses, rolling into a climbing left turn, pursuing Swinaga with relentless determination, as though he has hours of combat fuel to spare. "This is impossible," Swinaga gasps over the radio, straining under 5 Gs in a desperate ascent. How much fuel do these fighters carry? What he doesn't know is that Moore's P-51D launched with 400 gallons of fuel, more than double anything Swinaga has ever witnessed in a single-engine fighter. Even after a grueling 675-mile flight from Iwo Jima, the Mustang still has 200 gallons remaining, enough for an hour of intense combat plus the journey back. 3 miles away, Lieutenant Akira Watanabe faces an even deadlier fight. 2 P-51Ds are on him, coordinating their strikes with surgical precision, attacking in disciplined sequences that reflect exhaustive training and unwavering confidence in their aircraft. "Control, this is Lightning III, Watanabe cries. "These fighters aren't retreating. They're not saving fuel. How can this be?" Captain John B. Hampshire, leading the second flight of Mustangs from the 506th Fighter Group, hears what every Japanese pilot is thinking. To his wingman, Lieutenant Robert Carr, Hampshire declares over open radio, "They still don't get it, do they? We don't have to run. We don't have to ration fuel. We can fight and still make it home." The psychological impact on Japan's defenders is immediate and crushing. Decades of air defense doctrine, built on the certainty that American fighters lack the range, collapse as Mustangs achieve the impossible, 650 miles from home turf. Watanabe, his Ki-61 heavily damaged from multiple 50 caliber strikes, makes a fatal error. Believing the Americans must soon disengage, he continues the fight, hoping to outlast them. Hampshire's P-51D moves with calm precision, flown by a pilot utterly confident in his aircraft's endurance, methodically closing before unleashing a lethal burst into the Japanese fighter's engine. The Kawasaki Hay-40 erupts violently, spewing blackened oil and white coolant into the sky. Watanabe's final radio message, recorded by Tokyo ground controllers, carries a tone of disbelief. They are not turning back. They are not low on fuel. How is this possible? Elsewhere, Captain Tomojiro Ogawa, one of Japan's veteran aces, is locked in a 3-minute aerial duel with Major Moore's P-51D above the smoking ruins of the Nakajima factory, a lifetime in the frantic world of dogfighting. The fighters weave through the sky in a deadly spiraling arena of cannon fire and tracer rounds. Ogawa's Ki-84 Hayate, considered superior on paper in climb and turn rates, falters before the astonishing reality of Moore's Mustang, a machine that has crossed the Pacific yet retains the fuel to attack with crushing force. In a maneuver that will fascinate aviation scholars for generations, Moore intentionally sacrifices altitude in exchange for blistering speed, plunging from 15,000 feet to 8,000 feet in a fuel-intensive dive. Any conventional long-range pilot would be desperately conserving fuel for the return flight. Moore instead gambles, trading gasoline for victory, fully aware of his aircraft's unmatched reserves. Ogawa, straining in pursuit, senses the imbalance too late. The Mustang's superior stability at high velocity gives Moore the edge, while its vast fuel supply enables relentless aggression that Ogawa cannot match without dooming his own return. At 8,000 feet, Moore ascends sharply into a left banking turn, aligning his weapons with Ogawa's fighter. The 650 caliber Brownings roar in seamless unison, shredding the Hayate's wing and rupturing its fuel tank. Ogawa's final coherent thought, as his aircraft spirals toward Tokyo's streets, reflects the collapse of Japan's air dominance. If they can fly this far and fight this hard, then the war is already lost. At 07:14 hours, just 16 minutes after the first engagement began, the air battle concludes. 7 Japanese fighters lie destroyed. 2 P-51Ds are damaged, yet both will return to Iwo Jima, completing a 1,350-mile mission once deemed impossible for single-engine fighters. As the Mustangs regroup and begin their long journey back to Iwo Jima, still holding enough fuel for nearly 3 additional hours of flight, intercepted Japanese ground transmissions reveal the dawning of a new era in aerial warfare. All stations report immediately. How many enemy fighters are still active? Are they returning to their carriers? Negative control. There are no American carriers within 500 miles. Then where? Where are they going? Flight Sergeant Kenji Nakamura, one of the few Japanese aviators to survive the encounter, later recalled in his private journal, "Today I witnessed the future of air combat, and it filled me with dread. If the Americans can deploy fighters anywhere within our empire and still have fuel to spare, then nothing we hold sacred is secure. Distance is no longer our shield." The age of American air dominance over Japan has arrived, carried on the wings of machines that shattered every rule of the sky. Captain Masao Suinaga never returned from that April sortie. His Ki-84 Hayate, later discovered in a rice field outside Tokyo, with its fuel completely exhausted and one fatal 50 caliber hole through the cockpit, became an icon of Japan's grim new reality. The impossible had become routine. American fighters now ruled the skies over their homeland with unchallenged confidence. The psychological blow of that first P-51 very long-range mission swept through the Imperial Japanese Army Air Force like a silent earthquake. Flight Sergeant Nakamura, one of the last surviving witnesses, captured the shift in stark clarity. "We spent years fighting airmen forced to turn back at our shores. Now they appear and vanish at will, with fuel enough to stalk us across our own skies." Within days, Japanese defensive doctrine was forced into radical reconsideration. Distance, once their greatest ally, had been mathematically erased. With their unrivaled 1,650-mile range, American P-51D Mustangs could strike any point in the Japanese home islands and still return safely to Iwo Jima. Cold numbers completed the nightmare. From April 7th until Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945, Mustang pilots executed 51 very long-range missions against the home islands, flights averaging 1,350 miles, once dismissed as fantasy. In this period, American fighters destroyed 341 Japanese aircraft at the cost of only 62 P-51s. But the true devastation wasn't counted in aircraft destroyed. It was seen in the collapse of Japanese pilot morale. Master Sergeant Isamu Sasaki, a seasoned ace who survived the war with 38 recorded victories, later admitted, "After April 1945, we no longer believed we could win. If the Americans could send fighters from Iwo Jima to Tokyo with fuel to spare, then what else were they capable of? Where could we possibly hide?" The P-51 Mustang had achieved something far beyond tactical dominance. It had triggered a revolution in strategic warfare. The Merlin engine's exceptional fuel efficiency, paired with the Mustang's sleek aerodynamics and unmatched internal fuel capacity, completely rewrote the fundamental rules of air combat. Japanese pilots who had spent years exploiting the fuel limitations of American fighters suddenly found themselves outflown, outgunned, and relentlessly hunted in the skies above their own homeland. Captain Tomojiro Ogawa's final transmission, captured by ground stations before his Ki-84 plunged into Tokyo Bay, would prove tragically prophetic. "If they can come this far," he radioed, "then we have already lost the war." He was right. The ability to project fighter power over immense distances had permanently shifted the strategic balance. Japan's aircraft factories, once shielded by the sheer breadth of the Pacific, now lay exposed to pinpoint fighter attacks launched from distant island bases. Every Japanese countermeasure only underscored their growing desperation. By the summer of 1945, skilled pilots like Warrant Officer Kenji Fujimoto resorted to ramming B-29 superfortresses, not in an act of ancient warrior honor, but because every conventional tactic had failed against enemies who could strike anywhere with seemingly limitless endurance. Today, the P-51 Mustang's ultra-long-range missions are remembered as one of history's most extraordinary demonstrations of how technology can tilt the balance of global conflict. Modern analysts still study those audacious flights from Iwo Jima to Tokyo as textbook examples of how range, stamina, and strategic reach can become decisive weapons of war. The silver Mustangs that stunned Japanese pilots on April 7, 1945, didn't just win aerial duels, they redefined the very limits of what was possible in the sky. They proved that with enough engineering genius and tactical evolution, the unthinkable could become routine. So the next time you see a P-51 in a museum or at an air show, remember Captain Masao Suenaga's bewildered final question. How did they get here? The answer didn't just win a battle, it changed the world. Which impossible mission do you believe could transform warfare next? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II's most dramatic moments.